Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. Thanks so much for joining us today as we wind up the school year and start looking towards the summer. We have a really good show for you today. I always say that when we open the show because I always think we have a great show for you. If you think this is a great show, I'm going to put in my weekly plug for reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. It helps us to get more people aware or make more people aware of the podcast. And so if you have time to go on there and give us a review, I would appreciate it. We're going to be talking about rising interest rates and how that might be impacting your plans for paying for college. And we're also going to be talking about recommendation letters. Because now is actually a really good time to ask for them if you are a junior. But we're going to talk a little more about that later. First, I mentioned that we are winding down the school year and approaching summer. So what better thing to talk about than summer plans? And joining me for that is my colleague, Tova Javits, who is a former admissions officer at Barnard, Fordham, and Montclair State. And Tova, I almost just completely biffed on your last name because I have your old one written here. So Tova also just got married. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. If it makes you feel any better, I introduce myself wrong about 4 times a day. So
Okay.
we're
Well,
learning together.
all right. Sounds good. I looked at the written word and I thought that is not her name anymore. So, well, here's my first question for you. It is when this airs, it will be May 19th. Um, is it too late to make summer plans?
Not at all. Not at all. It also depends where you are in the country. May 19th, where I live in Southeast Georgia, my kids will have been out of school already for almost a week. Summer will be in full swing, which is mind boggling. But I
Mm-hmm.
think in plenty of parts of the country, you still have a full month left where school isn't getting out until end of June, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
Northeast, I think. So there is plenty of time left to still figure out some wonderfully fulfilling, engaging way to spend your summer months.
Yeah, I did a segment on summer planning way back in January with Landis, and we talked about how it wasn't too early at that point. I'm here to tell our listeners, honestly, more of the interesting things are still available for students to do this summer. And, the opportunities that have really passed most people by are the formal organized programs, most of which are fine. They can be good ways to spend your summer, but aren't necessarily always the most exciting from an admissions point of view. So I'm actually excited we're talking about this today because I really feel like more interesting opportunities might be available to students who have waited up until this point to think about their summer.
Right, especially as their interests have evolved over the last number of months, they may have a better sense of what they want to dive into more deeply. Where had you asked them 6 months ago, they would have shrugged and said, "Oh." So there's plenty of time for those creative students to say, "Huh, what do I want to do, and what could I do?"
Right. And probably there are still plenty of students who are saying, well, I don't know.
Oh,
So, I mean, my go to literally for almost every student I work with is how about a job? What is your thought on a summer job?
I think everywhere I turn as a consumer where I live is I'm seeing help wanted signs. You can't go to a restaurant without waiting a long time for service because they all need more servers. Grocery stores need more employees. Everyone I know who owns a small business is struggling to get help. Get a job. There's so many great ways to build your life skills, your life lessons, earn a little bit of money. And the life experience that comes from a job, and we can talk about what that can look like, is limitless. So
Hmm.
that's always my go to, also.
Yeah, I worked every summer when I was in high school. My son has now had a job since starting last summer. He actually had one all during the school year the previous year. I think a job is great, and I also think that sometimes for students shooting for the most selective schools, it is the thing that is the most overlooked.
Yeah.
I frequently find that those students have been so focused on academic things and doing those things with their summers that to actually have a job makes that student a little bit more unique than
Yeah.
some of the other students in those applicant pools.
Work for a summer as a waitress. and you have some life skills that will serve you well at any elite college.
I would agree. Some parameters that I would put out there for a job, really for me, it's less about what you do, but more about how you do it. And
Yeah.
so, if you're going to get a job and you're going to work 10 hours a week scooping ice cream, that's fine. Is that a summer? I don't know. That leaves you an awful lot of time to do nothing.
Yeah.
Um, so, my perspective is if you're going to work a summer job, I think a minimum of 20 hours a week. And ideally, if it's a full-time opportunity, that to me would be the most impressive. I'm curious if you have thoughts around that piece of it, or if there were any jobs you remember students doing from your time in admissions that kind of struck you as interesting or compelling.
Oh, both questions I have thoughts on. So first, in terms of time, our students are so scheduled, Beth. They're so overscheduled.
Mhm.
And even if it is a 40-hour a week full-time job, I want then for that student to have a little bit of time before the job begins and a little bit of time before the job ends. And have downtime in the evenings so that there is still some time for rest and relaxation in the summer. I know you're not suggesting that's not allowed at all,
Right.
but 10 hours a week, probably not quite enough to fill your time. 40 hours a week is a lot. And I do want students to spend some time over the summer recharging their batteries. So balance, like everything we say in this world, is key. Finding that balance that's right for you. Gosh, some of the fun, coolest summer jobs are just like what you said, the not prepackaged obvious ones. The time that student was working on a farm, cleaning out horse cages and milking cows at a small neighborhood farm that didn't have all the infrastructure to do it mechanically. The I know a student who this summer is getting paid in pennies essentially. I think they're going to cover their daily lunch, but
Hmm.
they're going to help out on a construction site so that he can shadow basically the manager who's at this development site and learn a little bit about construction management in terms of, gosh, how do you develop an entire new neighborhood from building and paving the roads, laying the pipes, to actually building the houses and what goes in there. He's going to do a lot of grunt work and work pretty darn hard this summer, but is going to learn a lot about how to actually take that from zero to full and completion. So this really comes down to, what do you want to learn more about? Who needs help? And are you maybe willing to work for free, work for lunch, work for the experience? This is where we get blurry lines between what's an internship, I'm using air quotes for those of you just listening, versus what's an actual job. And is there such a difference between the two?
Well, I think that's a really good point. Is there a difference? I love the construction piece that you're describing, because the student will actually be doing some construction, but there's so many different applications. Is he learning some civil engineering? Is he learning urban planning? Is he just simply learning how to run a business? If he's paying attention, he could learn about all of those things. And that's kind of fascinating. I think you could extend that to working in a grocery store. Yes, maybe you're working as a cashier up front, you're learning about customer service, you're learning about stock. How do you keep, if you're paying attention anyway, how does the grocery store make sure that they have enough of what people are going to come looking for on a Saturday morning in the middle of the summer? Like, do you have enough watermelon? Do you have enough hamburgers and hot dogs and all of the things that it seems like people stock up on on a
What
on
do
a
you
beautiful weekend?
Right. And what do you do right now when you have serious supply chain issues and you don't have enough? And how do you handle an angry customer who came in to buy that thing that they needed, expecting the grocery store to have it, counting on the grocery store to have it, and they don't? And are
Right.
you the 16-year-old as the first line of defense to have that conversation with that customer? And how does that go? So there's so many great lessons that you can learn at any job.
And I think the theme running through this all, so far anyway, is making something of what you are doing, and the idea that your activity this summer doesn't have to be super fancy. It can
Right.
simply be something like you're helping, you're working for the Y and they have a local kids camp. And so you're a camp counselor.
Yeah.
And, what does that look like? What can you learn from it? What can you take away from it? And there is nothing wrong with having a job that you sort of think to yourself, this isn't really like a job. I love this. I know plenty of people who were camp counselors and in high school
Goal.
who thought it
That's
was great.
life, right? Do what you love and you never work a day in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel that adage is a little iffy.
A little lofty.
Put forth by someone who probably found something they really did love doing and made a lot of money doing it. And so it feels really great. Like I've never worked a day in my life. Well, that's nice. You do have a really nice house, and I'm guessing there was some work involved there. But I think too about you mentioned something a little bit earlier, kind of like looking around at the jobs that are available, what's needed in your community.
Yeah.
I could extend that out to, I still remember there was a student whose application I read when I was at Penn. So we're going back a few years. For her summer, so she had, over the course of the second half of her junior year, she took driver's ed, like many students her age did at the time. She was so appalled. This is you're going to know when I tell this story why speaks to me. But she was so appalled by the quality of writing and grammar and punctuation in the driver's ed handbook that she reached out to the DMV in her state and
Oh my
said,
gosh.
"Can I, for free, can I just go through this and copy edit it for you, please?"
Oh my
And they
God.
said yes. Is that not amazing?
That's awesome.
Because I rewrite things all the time in my head. Like I look at a sign and I think,
Yeah.
why is that punctuated that way? Why'd they choose that word? What were they
Right.
thinking? Right? Or a menu. I do the same
Yeah.
thing, right? So
Oh
I
gosh. Yeah.
loved that this young woman was like, this is a problem, and then went out and
I can
reached
fix
out and fixed it.
it. Right.
Like that's a cool, that is the kind of, now obviously that's a kind of wild example, but
No,
it's
but
not
your
so.
point is well taken. It's figuring out, well, where is their need? And sometimes students come on it by accident.
Mhm.
One of my favorites is a student I worked with 2 years ago, was being honest with herself about just in Georgia, it's hot in the summer, Beth. We don't love always to go outside. It's just too hot. Middle of the day, people are looking for things to do indoors. And this is like the heat of COVID also. So everyone's
Mhm.
really locked down. And she was spending a lot of time on Zoom with her cousin in another country. And they were working on makeup together. And this is all building to sound very trite and trivial. They're indoors talking, video chatting, doing makeup together. In walks her cousin's friend, who was unfortunately a victim of an acid burn attack.
Mm.
Terrible.
Yikes,
They get
terrible.
to talking, and the student I was working with, does this whole makeup tutorial. And 30 minutes some later, there's all this talk of empowerment and strength. Yes, beauty on the inside. How do you make it match on the outside? And it spills into this now weekly series that she was doing for other young women in their community, because there was quite a number of similar situations.
Hey.
Gets in touch with a local plastic surgeon, and now over the course of the summer has built an online makeup tutorial program with acid burn victims, working with a surgeon, and created from essentially nothing this really cool, meaningful, impactful program. Ended up writing her essay about it as well, and filled building it around the weekly sessions, filled so much time doing research, understanding how this happened, got in touch with all these other supporters to find funding. And it was from just sitting on Zoom doing makeup with her cousin. And these things can happen when you look for opportunities that are needed.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the overarching message, that, and I know people listen and think, well, I don't have that scenario. Well, of course not, but I bet you do have something that's close to home, and it doesn't have to be quite as impactful as that story. I mean, that's an amazing one, but there are little things that you can do that can occupy your time and also fill a need in your community. And I think that those are some of the things that I would look for. I think as we come to the end of the time that we have, one thing that I would also know, I'm guessing that the person you're talking about who has the construction opportunity, did the family know that person? How did he secure that part?
And this is a good point, because like, where do you even look? How do you begin if you don't see a help wanted sign? Reach out to your network. This was a friend of a friend's cousin kind of a situation.
Sure. Yep.
Start with your network, but reach out to a teacher who is running a STEM camp this summer, and your favorite chem teacher, chemistry or bio teacher needs an extra hand. Sure, I'd love to help. Reach
Right.
out to your teachers, reach out to your parents' friends, reach out to your friends' parents, and see who maybe does something in the world you'd like to learn more about, who knows someone who might be able to help out, who has an opportunity for you. Absolutely use your network. Where else, other than that help wanted sign that you happen to magically pass by when you're walking down the street?
Right. So I think we've identified three major things, right? Help wanted. There are
Yep.
jobs everywhere if you're willing to work.
Yes.
Looking around yourself at a problem that might exist and figuring out fully on your own and with the help of others how to fix it, and then using your network and really accessing those people to find opportunities to just get involved and do interesting things as you
Yeah.
define them. And I think if you spend your summer doing that, then you'll probably have a successful summer.
Absolutely. Oh, I love how you summarized that so nicely. And as you said, what do you put into it? That's what you'll get out of
Yeah, absolutely. So, final message to everybody, it is definitely not too late for you to
it.
do something with your summer. So, get on out there and figure it out because as soon as you get to July, at that point it is too late. So,
No. Yeah.
get it
Summer's halfway
done.
over then.
Exactly. Tova, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Okay. My pleasure.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are talking about rising interest rates and how that might be impacting your ability to pay for college. So, don't go away.